So working with Eko Studio, we have the ability to create a timeline. So this is the timeline that we saw happening. We're going to talk our way through this a little bit and then work on creating something with some choices. So when you're on the screen, you can switch over to the hand tool and move around. You can also, instead of using the hand tool, if you hold down the space bar, then it allows you to move around on screen. So after all of your assets have been loaded, then we're going to start connecting things together. So if I just want a sequence of animations to play, so I have my opening animation of the unicorn coming in and out, and then that goes to an option on the next screen where there will be text. So if I have an animation, I can add a node, add a video element to it, and then just connect it. So I could have a series of small video nodes that are connected with no button option, so they will automatically link one into the next. So they'll just play in the order that we see on screen. But now in help text, if we look at what's going on with help text, I think I'm going to put a timer back up because it's useful when we are giving choices to have a timer on screen. And I'm going to put it over here so it's the same as on the other screens. Now with this, one thing to notice is that inside the timeline here, there's a star on no, but not on yes. So if you take too long to make your choice, then it's going to automatically select no. And when we choose the no node, we will see its action as it connects with the horrible node. So the actions window over here is where we're able to then choose what element we want it to connect to. So the no button connects to horrible. The yes button is going to then connect to the weapon node. And we can see that inside our flowchart down here where we have these two nodes connecting, weapon and horrible. Now under weapon, we get to choose the weapons that our unicorn is going to bring to the battle. And we have gun, which will connect to a gun node, sword, which will connect to a sword node. Now, if we don't make a choice, it's going to randomly choose one of those two options. So if we don't choose before time runs out, it will randomly choose one of those options. It's required to have a choice. Now, if you want the choice, so if they don't choose a weapon, you could have a third path. That's the path that the thing will follow without them making a choice. We could have another node, but that node could then be the only one with a star. So if they don't choose before time runs out, it will choose that node. And then that node can have whatever it wants on it. Now, it's kind of ugly having that third button there that's the default. But if I take that button and change it with a different opacity so it disappears, it's now not clickable anymore. So now that button right there, they're not going to click on it. So now we have our options of gun and sword. Move those back over. So as it plays, we'll see, choose your weapon. Just make them look a little bit better. But if we don't choose something, it goes to this node right here. And on this node, we could then have a different animation that we put there, or we could connect to it differently. It could be perhaps at that point, it's going to randomly go to one of the monsters, but then it's guaranteed to lose, so we can't defeat either monster because we didn't choose a weapon. And it would be nice to have it give us a little message that says, you know, you are entering battle unarmed. And then, so we could have an additional message going on there. So if I name that node, I can go into that node. And this is where we can add in a button. I'm going to dispense with the timer because they're not choosing anything here. But this button, if it's now going to be a graphic in its style, we could bring an image in if we had an image in our library to bring in, which the only image I have right now is that. So it's just my title graphic. But if we'll just position the text off screen, get rid of this timer and now go to this button here. So it's just text. Enter battle unarmed. Now this is where, if we did this where we made the rest of our graphics, we would have a matching look and style, and it would be much easier to make that happen. And this button is behaving as a graphic. Now, what we really want to do is to set up two more nodes where I would have the night node and the ninja node. Oh no, sorry, not the ninja. It's going to be the knight and the zombie, matching what is happening here. And it's going to connect to one of those two items. Ditch the timer once more. Now, if we notice here, knight and zombie are starred. That means it will choose one of these after this slide finishes playing.
Randomly?
Randomly. It will choose one of those. If I only have one star, it chooses that one. If I have two, you have a 50-50 chance. If you have three, 33 1/3. So however many options you have. So if you wanted a choice of like 10 different random outcomes, you would put 10 items on there. Now, this is where I'm able to show something and land on something without, having to code or program anything here. And now this item, I just go in and say its opacity is 0. This one has opacity of 0. So it's randomly going to choose, once this node finishes playing, knight or zombie. Close out of here. Back to the timeline. And now this is going to bring me to my failure text. This is the text that comes up and says, "You're of no help, the unicorn is dead." And we'll just connect both of those. So either of those outcomes will lead to death. But if you notice, the sword allows me to win the encounter because the sword is effective against both the knight and the zombie. Where the gun is only effective against the zombie, but the bullets are bouncing off the black knight. And anytime we don't have any nodes connected to something, so it's at the end of a path, it will then, when that node is done playing, go to the end screen, to the finish. And you are eligible to, if you bring in a graphic, if you make a graphic to bring in, you can put that on the end screen so it gives you a final visual message, whether it's credits, whether it's a picture of something, but you can bring in your own graphic at that point. Now, after I have won, it then plays the next video of choose your companion, and it has the two buttons on screen. ninja, or robot. And if you don't choose, it will randomly choose one of those for you. But again, we could add a third option, just like on weapon.
Wife.
That would be no companion if you don't make, or a third companion that hasn't been animated yet, and bring that in and figure it out. Now, the ninja wins against the dragon, loses on the alien. The robot beats the alien but loses on the dragon. And then if you die, well, then that ends, goes to finish. If you win, you get to continue on to the doors. It says choose a door, then it has the animation for the 2 doors with the buttons to choose, because the doors really required the picture of it. And we could have built a screen that had both weapons on screen, so choose a weapon had the animations of the weapons on screen, but I was just trying to simplify and standardize some of the presentation within it. But you could make it with as many different sequenced animations, put the buttons on the one that you feel is the best option, and then we have a final win and a final lose, and after that brings it to the ending screen. So a couple of key things there: making invisible buttons so that it provides choices. So looking at the gun screen, on the gun screen we have the knight and the zombie buttons, but their opacity is set to 0, but their actions will then lead to either zombie or knight, and it will randomly choose one of those 2 options. And once you've built your flowchart, it's just a matter of making sure that you have set up all of the connections correctly. So when I whip this together the first time, my help text screen, yes pointed to horrible and no pointed to weapon. So my connections were flip-flopped, so I tried to preview it and it wasn't working. So it's important that we make sure that our elements are going to the correct item that we need them to go to. Item that I forgot to mention is when you are putting buttons in, you have an option of, do they activate when the node ends, or do they activate on click? So when you click on the button, it automatically goes to that next node, and you do that under actions, both choosing where it goes and how you want it to be. We can also see the difference when we look here under connection view, and under connection view we can see anytime we make a choice, if it's on click, it's a hollow circle. If it's a default on node end, the circle is filled. So now we can see our options as work my way through. So if I choose robot or ninja, I want those to go on click. And then under my doors, we want those both to go on click versus node end. So we can see the distinction between the hollow circle and the filled circle, and whether it's an automatic node end or it's something where I get to participate in making that choice. The choice is on screen and going to a default option. So right now, at the beginning, we added an option of you don't choose a weapon, so you are unarmed, and that led to the unarmed node, which goes to then giving a message saying, hey, you're unarmed, and then it will randomly choose one of the 2 monsters, and then you die because you don't have a weapon to fight with. Well, a problem that happens is the timing from which when the buttons show up on screen and then disappear, and we can adjust it a little bit so the buttons are not there and then they come in, and theoretically then they should fade out. So if I put my endpoint here, they should be faded out before I go to my next screen. But what we will see is we can move that over pretty much as far as we want. And if we have really short little animation or video clips, this becomes a problem. And longer clips where you might have 2 seconds of opening or 2 seconds of closing at the end of your video, then you can get away with not having to worry about this. But when all of these animations are about 4 to 5 seconds long, I guess 4 seconds, 13 seconds, or 4.13 seconds, that's not much time. So because of that, the problem we run into so unicorn comes in, I'll help. Now if I don't choose a weapon, it automatically is defaulting to unarmed. Now we can see those buttons are still there, enter battle unarmed is there, and then that is carrying into the next slide, or the next node. So that's a problem. And that's just kind of ugly. So what you might want to think about doing is building yourself a bumper piece. So you have a little short, say 2-second transition video that allows you to go between things. Now, if you noticed, when I clicked yes or no, it wasn't a problem. Because when you have it jump on click instead of node end, all of the buttons go away. But when we don't click and it passively goes to a node without making a choice, then those items hang on. So what I can do is I have a copy of my empty thing. Now this is 4 seconds long. It'd be nice to maybe have a 2-second one. But what I can do is instead of having weapon go there, I can now bring it into my unarmed this way. So I bring this little intermediate node in, and for that matter I could have a second version of it that happens before going to each of my, so if background connects to there, and then this is now connecting to each of those. Whoop. All right, we're going to have to do a little fixing on this one here. Is enter battle unarmed, we want that. Timer we don't want, so I can throw that away. And now, I'm guessing we don't want night, zombie, night. We just want to go, so unarmed then goes to background. Oh, we still have a night. So we have our empty bumper, then we have the unarmed, then we have our next empty bumper. Now to again hide that, just change its opacity so it doesn't show. And now each of these items under this one, we just set opacity to 0, opacity to 0. And this now allows for that transition. So we've created bumpers of our background video, which is really just an empty video. And it's sandwiched between those bumpers. So now, when this runs, if I don't choose an option for my weapon, will help. Oh, got to get rid of that. Forgot to wipe that one. Now we have an empty screen. Then we'll see you enter battle unarmed. Oh, got a timer to get rid of on one of them. And then the night, and then we should lose. Okay. So ditch the timer here. Going to unarmed. Unarmed is good because we don't see any buttons there. And on this node here, just get rid of the timer. So now it's the background node. Unarmed, there's no timer. It will automatically play through to the next background and then give us one of our two random options because they're both starred.